in my view, the outcome of the Brexit vote is clearly bad news for Britain. At the macroeconomic level, if Britain loses access to the single market, that's going to be a disaster for the British economy. Until the negotiations about the single market are completed, there will be a lot of uncertainty, policy uncertainty about what kind of deal we're going to end up with. And until then, investment in Britain will be lower. There will be less spending. And so I would not be surprised if the British economy goes in a recession over the next few months. There could potentially be a huge impact on the financial services industry in the City of London. There, I think the main issue is that the British banks currently have this EU passport that allows them to provide financial services throughout the European Union. And if Britain loses access to the single market, banks will lose this passport. And then it's possible that many of them would have to set up headquarters elsewhere, move people. So we'll see whether Britain is going to be willing to give up on immigration and disappoint a lot of those voters that voted leave, or whether they should make the economic sacrifice and lose the access to the single market. One opportunity for Britain, the easy opportunity to preserve access to the single market, is to follow the so-called Norway model. I do not think this is a viable solution for Britain in the long run. Because yes, it would preserve access to the single market, but it would come at the expense of, first of all, free movement of labor, which British voters clearly don't want by revealed preference. Two, Britain would have to continue paying into the EU budget, which they don't like. And three, Britain would have no say over the EU rules, which I don't see the British liking at all. Brexit, if it takes place, will reverse the long-term process of European integration, which has contributed significantly to peace and prosperity in Europe. Losing Great Britain means losing a big voice sort of towards the rest of the world. EU will now be smaller and less important on the global stage. Another unfortunate consequence of the Brexit vote is that over the next few months and possibly years, European politicians will be solving Brexit. Instead of dealing with important problems such as immigration, the Eurozone, Greece, I view that as very unfortunate, almost unfair of the British to put us in this position. So on the bright side, Brexit could potentially lead to closer cooperation and closer integration in the rest of Europe. I'm saying potentially because this is really a bimodal outcome. Brexit could lead to a total dissolution of the European Union. That's one event whose likelihood has gone up. But Brexit could also encourage much closer cooperation between the remaining countries. Just to give one example, the Capital Markets Union was meant to encompass all 28 EU countries. But with the departure of Britain, I would not be surprised if we end up with a Eurozone-centric Capital Markets Union that comprises only the 19 countries of the Eurozone, with everything being centralized, with a single supervisor at the Eurozone level. These are all the things that Britain has opposed, but now with the departure of Britain, it's possible that the Eurozone will find a way of proceeding with a more centralized, top-down version of the Capital Markets Union.